Always forgetting something. Hey gang, Todd here, and we're heading south of the American border into Mexico. So we're highlighting a Lucha Libre film starring the greatest Enmascardo Luchador, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, of all time, El Santo. Now, he was born Rodolfo Guzman Huerta and got his start in the 1930s as a wrestler. Wasn't until the 40s when he adopted his stage name as a masked wrestler, El Santo, the man in the silver mask. And time the 50s hit, he was so popular he had his own comic book of his exploits fighting gangsters and supervillains. And after some coercion, negotiation, he finally agreed to appear in films and was an immediate, overnight sensation in the film industry. Made over 60 films between 1962 and 1976. The reason he stopped wasn't because of age, although he was well into his 50s by that time, but because there was a change in the Mexican government and they really didn't like the luchador film industry. You know, governments always want their film exports to be arty and classy, kind of forgetting us normal film goers, we just want what we like. And if that's masked Mexican wrestlers, then give it to the audience. Only critics go for arty and classy all the time. But you know, I bet even Roger Ebert had his own fair share of guilty pleasures he probably didn't like to talk about. Anywho, this film, which was originally called El Santo versus the Vampire Women, I'm not going to give you the Spanish pronunciation because my Spanish isn't that good, as you probably noticed. But, let's see, K. Gordon Murray. His company got the rights to several of these films, and he redubbed them into English, took out their scores, and put in library cues instead. And for some inexplicable reason, changed the name from Santo to Samson. Now, I could understand not wanting to change his name to the literal translation of the Saint, because Roger Moore's TV show, The Saint, was a huge international success at this time, playing all over the world, and wanted to avoid confusion for that. So he renamed him Samson, like the biblical hero, and I'm not sure why, because Godzilla was Godzilla, Rodan was Rodan, Dracula was Dracula. That's not exactly an English name. Why not El Santo? But that's what he did. And that brings us to our flick from 1965. Samson versus the Vampire Women. And we open with one of those eerie kind of spooky atmosphere type openings where we see Tundra get revived. Now there are several coffins there, including the one that belongs to Zorina. the queen of the vampires, wife of the Dark Lord of the Underground. And Tundra calls upon the Dark Lord so that she can walk amongst us ordinary people without arousing suspicion. Nice. Much better. Anywho, she then revives 3 muscle-bound assistants, and they all head out to get some nourishment and to bring some back to the rest of the coven. Here we switch to the home of Professor Roloff, and we get a lot of exposition as he translated an ancient papyrus. To wit, 200 years ago, one of his ancestors, Rebecca, was destined to replace Zorina as Queen of the Vampire. Well, not Queen of the Vampires, as the leader of that coven, and she was to return to the dark underworld to take her place beside her husband. Rebecca refused and ran away. Now, they've laid dormant for 200 years, but her ancestor on her, which birthday is it? 21st birthday, is destined to become the new leader of the coven. Now, she doesn't know this. Her father has never told her. But he knows this is true because she bears the mark of the vampire. Of course, throughout her childhood, she's been told this is nothing more than just a coincidence that a birthmark on her shoulder looks like a bat. Or, as they say in Mexican horror films, a vampire. No difference, apparently. So, also, consulting the papyrus, the professor knows that Rebecca was helped by an ancestor of Samson. And he calls to contact Samson because her birthday is the next night. Samson, unfortunately, is not in his lab and does not get the message. He'll have to get it later because he's a little busy. Yep. No man can stand against his signature move, the camel clutch. He's a luchador. Wrestling always takes precedence. These movies, the wrestling is always important. They'll stop in the middle of a criminal investigation, or if their friends have been kidnapped, because he's got to make it to that ring. He can't disappoint the fans. Anyway, while Santo is wrestling, the vampire maid of honor, I guess, chambermaid, I don't know, Tundra, and her 3 henchmen go to a nightclub to get some sustenance. now we are introduced to our final main character, Inspector Carlos. Although he's called Charles. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be his first name or not, but in the credits on IMDb he was listed as Inspector Carlos. And he does not like what he finds on the dead girl.
These two blue marks close together on the victim's neck are what have me puzzled, Inspector. Besides that, we didn't find one drop of blood in the corpse. Why, you could swear that a vampire murdered the girl. Hey!
As it turns out, the inspector is also a good friend of Dr. Roloff, and he has been told by Roloff that he suspects his daughter is in grave danger. And so the inspector and some men will be at Diana's birthday party the next night. Just in case. Although Roloff says he can't tell him why. Anywho, remember that guy they took away from the nightclub? Well, he's drained of blood so that Serena can be returned to her glory. Zarina is played by Lorena Velasquez, a very popular actress in Mexico, long career. She played in everything from historical dramas, westerns, science fiction, several other Santo films. Probably some of her work includes Ship of Monsters and Planet of the Female Invaders, in which she played aliens in those, as well as the Witch's Attack, in which she had a dual role. Most people in America, probably, if they know her at all, is from her Luchador films, where she played Luna Venus. I think that was it. In 3 films where she was teamed with the Golden Ruby as a tag team. There was a Doctor of Doom, in which they went up against a mad scientist. The Wrestling Women versus the Aztec Mummy, kind of self-explanatory. And She Wolves of the Ring, which was more of a straight crime drama. Anyway, the next night, Santo does come to see the professor after his match, learns about his ancestor, and pledges as a champion of the people vows to protect Diana, but he must do it his way. The next night at the costumed birthday party, Tundra and her assistants abduct Diana.
Don't fire! Your bullets could wound her!
Looks like the inspector's men are no match for the vampire henchmen. Who could save Diana?
Diana, don't!
Good thing Santo was there. I mean, Samson. Who knew vampires were susceptible to wrestling moves? Well, with more police arriving, they cut bait and run. Serena's not happy about this. They don't have a lot of time. Anywho, after Samson leaves, having done his duty for the moment, the professor tells the inspector, Diana, and her fiancé everything. Well, they have to accept this. After all, they shot people that couldn't die. Learning of another couple attacked at that same nightclub, the inspector decides the best plan is to go to that nightclub and use Diana as bait. While that's happening, El Santo has another match. Unfortunately, he doesn't know about the substitution. Starts, Santo realizes he's immediately in trouble.
What's the matter with him? I swear he's trying to kill you.
That fellow's not the Black Mask. He's been using karate on me, and he could kill me with one blow.
Refusing his assistant's advice to call off the match, Samson goes back into the ring where his opponent does the one thing that ends a luchador's career. He tries to pull off his mask. Once unmasked, a wrestler's career is over. At least until he pops up with another mask and identity. But that's neither here nor there. Luckily, El Santo, Samson, manages to turn the tables and unmask his opponent. And do they get a shock? Give me some trouble. So, not only is he a vampire, he's also a werewolf. What are the odds? Meanwhile, at the nightclub, Tundra has taken Serena there so that she herself can gaze on the prodigy of Rebecca. They look exactly alike. But Diana gets a bit of a shock herself.
She looks exactly like her ancestor. She'll be worthy of my throne.
Realizing the jig is up, so to speak, they immediately cut the lights and grab Diana. Luckily, our stalwart hero Samson is arriving just in time. Well, so much for that vampire thug. Luckily, the professor has been able to decipher the last piece of his papyrus and radios out Samson with where their castle is located. Rushing out there in his Samson mobile, he is promptly captured. And Tundra, for some reason, even though they are pressed for time with the sun coming up soon, and they've got to get this transfer of entities going, she starts wasting time.
At last we're going to know who our stubborn enemy is. Take off his mask.
She shouldn't have done that because now the sun's coming up. While the rest of the coven rushes for their caskets, the other two henchmen are also burned up. Then Samson, doing his best Superman, snaps his chains. Making sure Diana's all right, he rushes into the chamber with the coffins and rather cold-bloodedly deals with the vampire women. Man, he don't play around, does he? Well, after freeing Diana and carrying her outside, the inspector, her father, and fiancé all arrive after everything's over, of course. Well, returning Diana to her father and fiancé, Samson bids his adieu, and as he drives away, we get a rather Lone Ranger-esque final thought.
God bless Samson.
Who is he, Papa?
That's his secret. I don't think you'll ever know. But I'll say this, my dear. In this age where there are certain evil men who propose to destroy us, Samson is an example to men of goodwill who serve justice.
Yep. Great. Who was that masked man speech? Like a lot of foreign films that come over to America and are redubbed, they're an acquired taste. As I've said before about kaiju films and giallos and others. And these are fun films. I mean, you got a little superhero stuff. You got wrestling, which are always fun. Interesting side note. One of the reasons for the success of the Luchador films was that they didn't show wrestling matches on TV in Mexico. So you either had to go see them live or go to the theater. Now, as I said before, Santo had a very prolific career. All kinds of films. Along with this one, K. Gordon Murray also dubbed Samson in the Wax Museum. Other films in the Santo series was Santo and the Vengeance of the Mummy, Santo and the Treasure of Dracula, and he also teamed up with the Blue Demon in many films. He was another popular Luchadora in Santo and the Blue Demon versus the Monsters, or against the Monsters. Santo and Blue Demon versus Dracula and the Wolfman. Samson and the Blue Demon versus Dr. Frankenstein. You kind of getting the picture here. Oh, least we forget, Samson versus the Martians and Samson against the Blob. Yeah, he made a lot of flicks. And they're all fun. You get a little action. It's campy adventure. And this was before Batman. Yeah, it's lowbrow entertainment, but you know, if you're a wrestling fan, you gotta love these. If you're a superhero fan, you gotta enjoy these. And if you like both, hey, twofer. But yeah, most of his films were very low budget, but they made hefty profits. And sadly, at the end of his life in the 80s, he made a TV appearance in around 84 in which he unmasked for his audience. And a week and a half later, hi. And a week and a half later, he had a heart attack and died at 66. It's very sad. Well, that's all I really have to say about this one. Please hit like, share, and subscribe. And stay after the credits for my favorite scene. And he says hi too.